bringing the truth to America. This is TruthNet Radio.
Hello, everyone. We welcome Captain Jeff Latas of JetBlue Airways. Over 20 years in the U.S. Air Force and former U.S. Air Force Accident Investigation Board President. Has time in F-111s, T-38s, and the F-15E Strike Eagle. His combat experience includes Desert Storm and 4 tours of duty in Northern and Southern Watch. Thanks for joining us, Captain Latas.
Well, thank you, Rob. Thanks for all you're doing, too, because you're doing an outstanding job in finding the truth, and I think that's what a lot of us patriots really seek. So congratulations on your efforts, and I'm sure that this is a long way from over, but success, I'm sure, is on the horizon.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. You know, let me just go over one thing real quick before we get into the nitty-gritty stuff. Lieutenant Colonel Guy Razor, you know him, right?
I know Guy. Yeah. I listened to the interview that you held with him. I believe it was yesterday.
Yeah.
No, he's a real guy. Trust me. We flew at Mountain Home together, and I think we got there about the same time, and then we left Mountain Home at about the same time between 1998 and 2001. So yeah, he's authentic. He's the real person. And that was him talking to you on the phone.
Yeah, and I have to apologize to him because I was rushing to get that interview out. Not only did I call him a Marine fighter pilot, which he was with the Air Force, but I misspelled his last name. So I had to apologize for that, and I do apologize to you, Lieutenant Colonel Razor. And he does say hi, by the way.
Yeah, well, like I said, my greetings to him, too, if he happens to listen to this. So I look forward to seeing him sometime in the near future.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're going to have that Pilots for Truth conference. We'll all get together and do some hangar flying.
You bet.
Yeah, well, all right, good. So what brought you to our organization? What thought that you should send me an email and say, hey, I need to be on this?
Well, as you know, I've gotten involved in politics over the last few years, and it was about, maybe a year ago, I was dealing with some 911 troop people in Tucson who actually informed me that there was a Pilots for Truth group, and that's how I actually got plugged in. I think I sent you an email or something. Somehow I got in contact with you after that. It might have been in the summertime or maybe late summer. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, it was late summer last year.
Yeah, that's how I basically came about knowing about Pilots for Truth.
As a matter of fact, I think you were our 4th member, believe it or not. Fourth or
really?
5th member. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think that's before we even had the list up of the membership. We just had we were just starting out, and people were getting the word out there that we were starting the organization. But yeah, we're very grateful that you're with us, especially with your background and the fact that your involvement in politics, and we're very grateful that you're speaking out.
It's my pleasure, and I've always believed that even before I knew much about the whole truth movement, truth is really how we humans ought to behave under a conscience of truth, and I think from that, I think it's going to better our society, and we see that in the government all the way through, being it corrupt and the spin. I don't want to go as far as saying lying, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going on. It's a very deep in our government, and I think that we, the true patriots of this country, have to always seek the truth, no matter what the issue is.
Yeah, absolutely, and that goes to say, the research that we've been trying to get out there, and we've been very excited about the fact that it's hitting Yahoo News now, and that the discrepancy in the flight data recorder, and let's go a little bit over that if you want. The fact that this aircraft, the speeds it was flying at, the altitude it was at, how do you feel about all that when you first started seeing it when we were doing the research?
Well, obviously, I got a lot of my leads from you on the actual flight data recorder, and after I kind of did my own analysis of it, it's obvious that there's discrepancies between the two stories between the 911 commission and the flight data recorder information. And I think that's where we really need to focus a lot of our attention to get the help that we need in order to put pressure on government agencies to actually do a real investigation of 911, and not just from a security standpoint, but from even an aviation standpoint, like any accident investigation would actually help the aviators out by finding reasons for things happening. So, you know, when you take a look at what 911 Commission had and what the flight data recorder had, two obviously different stories here. And then when you look at it even more with the altimeter jump, and you can go through all that. But the things that really got my attention were the amount of descent rate that you had to have at the end of the flight of Flight 77 that would have made it practically impossible to hit the light poles. Essentially, it had been too high at that point. To the point of impact where the main body of the airplane was hitting the first and second floor of the Pentagon. So at 4,000, 4,500 feet per minute, and that's, well, 100, 200 yards out.
Yeah, it was about 200, about a little over 700 feet.
Okay. You know, I used to ride my bike there. You know, I'd ride my bike to the Pentagon, so I'm a little bit familiar with that area.
Yeah.
But you know, that kind of descent rate, it would have been impossible, essentially, for the results that we see physically from what the flight data recorder was reporting. So,
yeah.
like I say, that's an area that I think deserves explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, what do you say to those people who think, who try to use the argument and the excuse that there might have been altimeter lag?
Well, you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier. You and I both, I believe, flew, you know, glass cockpits, so the EFIS airplanes, it's all electronically done. There's not much of a lag there.
Yeah.
I see it every day I fly 2 or 3 times per flight, you know, when you're going through altitude, and it's pretty much instant. As fast as you can dial the altimeter setting in, that's how fast the altimeter changes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I really don't see that as a valid argument at all.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we have the United 93 data now, and I don't want to give too many details because we're still looking into it, but the United 93 data is going to put that altimeter lag argument to rest once and for all.
Well, to me, it's a non-issue, you know, and anybody that's talking altimeter lags, you know, that was back in the biplane days, steam-driven gauges and all.
That's right.
You know, God bless the people who saw that kind of stuff, but, you know, it's been a long time since airplanes have had that kind of a response.
Yeah, I mean, we got air data computers now, and the way they calibrate and measure these pedostatic systems and the air data computers prior to certification, just to get the aircraft certified in transport category today, they have to be pretty precise.
Well, and not only that, I mean, they are inspected. I mean, by regulation, they have to be within 75 feet on the ground and all that. So,
right.
Between all the altimeter settings, you know, it's not impossible, I guess, to have that kind of a lag, but it's pretty impractical in today's life.
Especially 400 foot worth of lag on a 4,000 foot per minute descent is a steep descent. I agree, but it's not anything exorbitant. It's not anything, you know, where you're going to cause almost 400 feet of lag in that. No.
No, yeah, that's not going to be possible.
Yeah, I agree.
But
I agree.
Even beside the point, the ground track is off from the from the 911 Commission.
Right. The plot.
There's several things that can be brought up, and it's been a while since I've seen the film and looked at the flight data recorder, and I can't think of all the discrepancies I saw, but there are several there.
Yeah, most certainly. And the film Jeff is talking about is our documentary we put out, Pandora's Black Box, Chapter 2, Flight of American 77. People can watch that on Google Video. They can search for it, or they can, of course, get it at our site. Speaking of which, what did you think of the telephone calls that we had with the NTSB and the FBI trying to get answers?
Well, it's pretty typical for some government bureaucrat to, when you corner them like you did, which I found very comical, actually. I was actually laughing at you guys cornering him and passing the buck. And then they get their PR spokesman on who, try to slick the conversation down a little bit and pawn it off on the FBI. And so, to me, I hope the NTSB person that you talk to is a little more responsible in his real job performance than he performed for you on that conversation.
Yeah, and as we know, Jeff Hill did that. He's not a pilot, and he did a really good job with
PumpItOut.com. And I don't know how he was so persistent and not get hung up on. So hats off to the guy. And
you should hear some of his other calls. I don't know if you've heard any of his other calls, but I mean, he called Controlled Demolition Incorporated, the people who were responsible for cleaning up the World Trade Center, and he I don't know if you're familiar with the famous quote of Larry Silverstein saying "pull it."
Right.
Well, he called him up to ask him what that term meant, controlled demolition. And the secretary comes back after she went to go find out. She's like, "Oh yeah, that means to demo the building."
Yeah, well, I think that's a given, and I don't want to get too far out. I'm not an expert in the New York site.
Yeah, neither am I.
Obviously, I keep up with it, and I have my own conclusions that I've come up with, but and obviously, I think the Achilles heel in the New York area would be World Trade Tower 7.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And to me, that's suspiciously obvious of some further investigation as well and explanation. And I have faith that we're going to have something in the future because the rest of the public is starting to wake up to, especially that building. People can relate to that.
Yeah.
Can't relate to altimeter lags, but the true technicality of an investigation, be it building collapses or airplane accidents, obviously a big lag, or not a lag, but letdown in true investigation on both matters. And I think that we Americans need to demand further investigation just to clarify the discrepancies that you have found.
Yeah.
So, and I think that we need to be getting on the phone with our congressmen and women and letting them know that we don't accept the excuses that we're hearing now, that we want true investigators to do a true investigation. So.
Right, absolutely. And since you've gotten into politics a little bit, let's talk a little bit about your political, what you've been doing as far as politics, and I know you ran for candidacy out in Arizona.
Well, I about 2.5 years ago, I guess. About 2 years ago, I decided that I'd run for Congress, U.S. Congress, in Arizona's 8th district. And essentially a year ago, I was out there campaigning for it. I was defeated in the primary, and the person who actually beat me in the primary went on to be my congressperson.
Mm-hmm.
But from that, I was pretty much a nobody. I was relatively new to Arizona, even though I'd lived there in 1978 up until I went into the Air Force in '82. I went back in 2001, and so nobody really knew who I was. And I'll be honest, I didn't know much about the political system. And like I was saying, by using truth as my main tool to express what I felt, my passion, I actually did fairly well. I had a lot of people who heard that and appreciated it. From my putting my toe in the political world, you might say, I was able to get elected within the Democratic Party. I'm the Arizona vice chair in the Democratic Party. And the reason why I decided to get involved in the party itself is because I feel the party needs to change.
Yeah.
The only way that I can change the party is become more participant in the system itself. And that's part, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems that we have with our political system right now is a lack of participation amongst the public. And I'm not saying everybody needs to get as involved in it as I do, but I think everybody ought to participate a little more in democracy. That way we don't get the George Bushes in there. That way we don't get the corporate control of our government that we're witnessing now, which is, oh, by the way, probably the biggest impediment that we have investigating the 911 situation is just the corporate interest doesn't want us in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for our Arizona listeners, you're thinking about running again? I'm sure you'll get a lot of support now.
Well, believe it or not, there has been a little bit of pressure, not a whole lot, for me to run against my current congressperson, Gabrielle Giffords. She is a Democrat, but she lacks a certain amount of progressive policy making. She's a very, very conservative Democrat, and the Democratic base in Arizona is kind of getting a little bit upset with her votes right now, especially when it comes to Iraq. Most of us believe that we put Democrats in power to get out of Iraq, and our Democratic-led Congress is basically letting us down, and Gabby Giffords has voted with the Republicans when it comes to Iraq. So there is some pressure on me to run against her. I don't think I will.
I think you should. I think you'd get great support, especially since most of America is I think the last poll was 84% or more want a new investigation.
Right. Well, I will tell you, I would have Bob Bowman's support. So he came down to Tucson, and I had dinner with him, and
wonderful.
heard his. That was the first time I actually met Dr. Bowman, and I tell you what, he has. If you have not heard his speech that he's doing currently in his Patriot tour, it is well worth it. I don't usually get too inspired from political speeches, and his was definitely very inspirational. So. For anybody that has an opportunity to hear Dr. Bowman, by all means go do it, because it is really an exciting speech.
Yeah, Dr. Bowman was very much an inspiration for myself as well, and very instrumental and a very instrumental part in helping to wake my butt up to start my research and get involved with what's going on in our country.
Yeah.
So we're very grateful for Bowman, and he is very much a big part of creating this monster of Pilots for 9/11 Truth.
Well, and I think a lot of people, especially if you're an aviator, there's a certain connection that you make with them that instantly you're like, this is truly authentic. This guy, and it's unfortunate he was defeated in his congressional race. But he is truly somebody that I fully respect when it comes to his style of politics.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to get a little bit into, the fact that it's so wonderful. You're still flying the line like Glenn Stanish and a couple other pilots that we have. A lot of people make the excuse that we only have so-called crackpot pilots that are retired, and. I want to remind everybody, Captain Latas is calling from the terminal at JFK right now. He's waiting on a flight that he's getting ready to go on. So if you hear the announcements in the background, that's what it is. But, I know a lot of pilots, a lot of my friends, as a matter of fact, that, they speak out and they agree with what we're doing, but they just don't want to put up their names yet. Have you run across a lot of those types flying?
Not a whole lot. Now obviously you know what kind of a conversation goes on in the cockpit.
Right.
If you talk to people in a logical way, if you try not to lean into the hypothetical, if you try to stick with the facts, I think a lot of people start going, yeah, what about that? What about this? What about that? And if you can just get people to start questioning what we're questioning without jumping to conclusions, and allow them to form their own opinion and conclusion, really, there's not too much of a problem with that.
Yeah,
and I encourage everybody, if you listen to this interview, that let's stick to that. Let's not jump to conclusions. and let's just go, okay, this is what we know, and these are the things that we ought to be looking for to know more about. And I think that that's going to be the key in actually succeeding and getting a more expeditious investigation on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I always try to adhere to the strict policy, I guess, or mission statement that we have, that to not offer theory.
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your wife? I understand she was an air traffic controller.
Yeah, well, my wife and I actually are an ROTC romance. We met in boot camp, per se.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, and believe it or not, I listened to one of your other interviews from Mr. Lear, and it kind of brought back memories because I grew up in Wichita, and my boot camp where I met my wife was in Wichita. So we got married about 6 months after that. We were both still in school. I was at the University of Arizona, and she came down and joined me. Upon graduation, we both were commissioned into the Air Force. She went off to be an air traffic controller, and I went off to be a pilot. And been married now for, probably shouldn't have gone down that road, 27 years, 28 years, 1979.
You better keep her away from our website.
Almost 30 years.
You better keep her away from our website if she listens to this interview.
Okay, well, I've been up all day. I got up really early this morning. I'll use that as my excuse. Anyway, she's been a great mother to my two kids, and she got out of the Air Force mid-'80s, and when I was in the Pentagon, she actually worked for a contractor with the FAA and did a lot of the GPS approach plate building. People are familiar with pre-flight. She was involved in that as a tech writer.
Right.
So she has a pretty decent aviation background as well, and she is currently running for the town council there where I live in Arizona, which is Oro Valley, which is a suburb of Tucson, just north of Tucson.
And how does, I don't know if she wants you to speak for her based on what we're working on, but how does she feel about the research that we've been doing and just 9/11 in general, how it was handled?
Well, I think that she also believes that there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered, that there are discrepancies between the real story and what we're being told from the government. She's a believer that the current government, and especially the presidential administration, loves to do nothing more than to stiff-arm the public and keep us from knowing information, because an ignorant public is one that you can manipulate the best.
Yeah.
So, when we start asking questions and as citizens, that makes the Bush administration really nervous, and I think you see that when you start seeing Berto Gonzalez, what's going on with him currently, and some of the things that have been popping up with Cheney, what's happening in Iraq right now with Petraeus. There's a lot of questions now that people are starting to bring up on, are they the right leadership? Do they even possess the type of leadership that we need for a country of free people?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, this latest thing, I haven't looked into it thoroughly.
Trying to get out of
Yeah, go ahead.
the announcements.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You might be breaking up. I might be just hearing you partly.
How's this? Is this better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. What do you feel about? I've been doing. I've seen a little bit of research, articles based on Cheney recently. He's talking about removing himself from the executive branch or something. Have you heard anything about that?
I just briefly caught some of it. I've been flying a pretty busy schedule over the weekend, and I was only catching little bits and pieces of it, so I'm a little behind. I'm about 3 or 4 days behind the current events going on right now. And, I don't get it. I don't know how you can do that when you're the vice president. You fall under the presidential administration.
It's in the Constitution under the executive branch. I know, I don't know how that can be done, but I haven't looked at it thoroughly.
But then again, some of the things that how can you actually make laws the way that they have basically shanghaied the government to get laws passed? Patriot Act, things like that.
Yeah. Military Commissions
don't really
Act.
make a whole lot of sense. Illegal wiretapping, unjustified wars, and they think they're king.
Yeah.
And King George.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good thing that many Americans are starting to wake up and starting to question. A lot more have to get active.
Well, I think that we could probably do a lot more. Like I say, I'm a little bit disappointed in my own party right now, and got involved to hopefully straighten that mess out. And the way the Democratic-led Congress is going, I've been frustrated. And I'm sure that my party officials don't like me when I get up on my soapbox and I talk more bad about the Democrats than I do Republicans. But I'm embarrassed by how the Democrats are acting. There's no excuse for the Republicans the way they're acting, but hey, that's not my party.
Right.
So I want to have a proud party, and there's a lot of people leaving the party because they're disappointed too.
Yeah, sure.
And,
they established that left-right paradigm,
You're breaking up on me again.
Yeah, all right. We'll wait until it passes.
Well, you're breaking up.
That's all right. We'll wait until it passes. Are you there?
It must be happening right when they make the announcement. There must be some kind of interference.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. Sure enough.
Yeah, well, all right. Listen, we'll wrap it up.
That's amazing. Every time they do that, you get cut out completely.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're hearing me or not.
Yeah, I can hear you. All right, we'll wrap it up. Well,
there you go.
We'll wrap it up. Well, Jeff Latas, captain with JetBlue Airways, 20 years in the U.S. Air Force, former U.S. Air Force accident investigation president. We thank you for joining us for this interview and speaking out.
No problem, Rob, and keep up the good work.
All right, thanks,
See
buddy.
what you're doing.
Thank you.